Chernobyl has been cut from Ukraine's power grid, sparking some new concerns tonight at the site of the world's largest nuclear disaster in history. And the outage is coming amid attacks on Kyiv and less than a month after the Russian forces took control of that site. Now, Chernobyl is closed, but electricity is still needed to cool and also ventilate and extinguish any fires there. Ukraine demanding a ceasefire to get the site repaired. But this latest incident only adds to the fears over whether this war could get far worse for the world. Dakota Rudsill is with the Mershon Center for International Security, Ohio State University, and joins us tonight as a guest. I want to start with a pretty basic question. What does Russia and Putin want with a site like Chernobyl? What's the interest?
Yeah, well, so far Russia has seized 2 of the 5 nuclear plants in Ukraine. And I think that their motives are pretty clear. They want to take control of critical infrastructure to project the idea that they are in command and in control in Ukraine and that their invasion is going well. And I think more specifically, they want to have the ability to turn off the light switch. They want to be able to control the power in Ukraine, which again reflects their sense of control over the country. And it also gives them a lever to be able to do things like turn off power that electronic devices need to run internet routers, charge cell phones, things of that nature. So it's a combination of kind of raw power, control over the power system, and also there's that information element to it as well.
Professor, I want to ask you about a NewsNation poll that we put forth to some of our viewers. 82% of Americans are concerned over a nuclear attack in the world within the next decade. You're one of many experts who follow this a lot closer than we do. Is that a real threat that you're feeling right now and that your colleagues are discussing?
It is, and I think that, frankly, the people are right to be concerned about it. I don't think that there's cause for panic at this point. Nuclear deterrence, as far as everything we can tell, is still intact. But this conflict is unique in a number of respects. This is the first war of this scale in Europe since World War II, the last time and the only time that nuclear weapons were used in war. Second, Vladimir Putin has made, from what we can tell, unprecedented threats towards the West in connection with and an amorphous but still unprecedented statement that he was putting Russia's nuclear forces on some sort of higher state of alert. Again, to the best of our knowledge, Russia has not called an operational alert before, or the Soviet predecessors, so that's new. What's uncertain is exactly what that means, because as U.S. intelligence officials testified yesterday, there are no observable significant changes, really, to Russia's posture of its actual nuclear forces, kind of where they are and what they seem to be doing. And so it's a little unclear at this point about whether that was just a very alarming statement that Putin made, or whether they're actually trying to do something differently. But again, in the background, nuclear deterrence is still operating.
Talk me through some of the deterrence. I mean, what are some of the options that the United States and others have at the ready?
Yeah, well, so deterrence is just the concept that another power is dissuaded from doing something, launching an attack or something like that, because the response to their attack would cause damage to them, which would far exceed any of the gains that they would have gotten from their original attack. That's the concept of nuclear deterrence. I think most people are probably familiar with the concept of MAD, or mutually assured destruction, which was the state of affairs during the Cold War. And is still the state of affairs today, meaning that if major nuclear powers like the United States or China or Russia have a full nuclear exchange, that those countries would be utterly destroyed and wrecked, and frankly, the human race would end. That's mutually assured destruction. But deterrence can also operate at lower levels of escalation. Deterrence can operate conventionally. It can operate with regard to use of maybe one nuclear weapon, or then going up in gradients to more nuclear weapons and where those are used. That's called graduated deterrence. And the point of deterrence, again, is to communicate to the adversary that if they take an escalatory step, that the response to that will be disproportionate to whatever gain they get. And there's a lot of thought, a lot of planning, a lot of very sophisticated weapons in the U.S. arsenal. And so certainly at this point, I would say that deterrence is intact. What we don't know is Vladimir Putin's mental state, exactly how desperate he would get and just how he would think about things.
And I heard you earlier talking about posturing and not quite knowing what's happening with the nuclear situation and Russia's capabilities. But in terms of the U.S. intelligence to be able to intersect something, to understand a potential threat that may be getting closer, does that match our capability to meet this monster?
Yeah, well, it is monstrous, isn't it? It's as monstrous as it gets. So I would say that the capability that the U.S. military has and the U.S. intelligence community and our allies to monitor Russia's long-range nuclear forces, strategic nuclear forces, submarines with submarine-launched ballistic missiles, land-based ICBMs, long-range bombers, our ability to monitor those is pretty good. That was built out during the Cold War. The United States has maintained those capabilities. We can watch them, and we know if things are changing. We know if their alert level is changing. We can also have an ability, to some extent, I won't go into detail, but to monitor the communications that the Russian nuclear command and control system uses. What we can't monitor is what goes on between Vladimir Putin's ears. All we can look at what he says, what he does, what experts say about him. So that interior of his mind, that's kind of the blackest of the black boxes here. Well,
Professor, taking us to school on a very scary subject right now, but the reality is we got to talk about it and we got to be prepared. Professor Dakota Rudsill, I appreciate your expertise. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for watching. Click the red subscribe button below so you can get more of NewsNation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.